Hey guys, and what's going on? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a film that recently came out that I've been looking forward to, and that is A24's Talk to Me. Written and directed by Danny and Michael Philippou, this film was written by them alongside Bill Heinzman and stars a pretty solid cast of people like Sophie Wilde, Joe Bird, Alexandra Jensen, Miranda Otto, Otis Donji, and many more. So here we are once again with a new horror film coming from A24, a studio that I love very dearly, and I'm always really interested to see anything they release, whether I enjoy it or not. And more often than not, I tend to be a fan, or at least an appreciator and admirer of the stuff that comes out of their studio. And when I started seeing trailers for Talk to Me, it definitely seemed like something that was going to be up my alley. There was something about the trailer that seemed eerie and off, and over the course of the last 2 weeks, between early press reviews that I had been reading, as well as some reviews for those who have been seeing it since it's been out for a little over a week now, I had been hearing some really good things, with this movie being tossed into the conversation for one of the best horror films of 2023, if not the best horror film of 2023. And after having checked out the film, while I don't think it's the best horror film of the year for me personally, I definitely think it's one of the better films we've gotten in the genre at this year. Talk to Me focuses on a group of teenagers that, similar to a lot of teenagers in the world, saw something on social media that their friends were doing and wanted in. And this is a film that definitely has some heavy metaphors for a lot of real life stuff that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But one of the things you can instantly compare this kind of idea to is something like a Ouija board. You got a bunch of kids that are getting together to do something that is, going to, be creepy and spooky, and it's weird, and we got to kind of get all together in a dark room, and we're going to try to talk to spirits in a way. And so it definitely had that Ouija board vibe. But on top of that, it also really reminded me of the various things that we've seen happen in the last decade in social media when it comes to teenagers, seeing other teenagers doing something that's incredibly dangerous that ends up getting a lot of people hurt online. Things like the salvia craze, where people were just smoking salvia and posting videos of themselves completely dead, essentially, for a short period of time on YouTube. I remember seeing tons of those videos at a certain point. And then even things like the Tide Pod craze, where you have all these teenagers and kids seeing other people eat Tide Pods, and it ended up leading to a bunch of people going to the hospital and getting sick, and it's just kind of crazy that's the case. But this movie, I think, definitely is making some very noticeable commentary when it comes to stuff like that. But I think the most notable thing here is addiction, and specifically just the nature of it kind of being imbued in who you are, the generational addiction. I think that's definitely the main takeaway that I had from this film. The base premise, as I was saying, is we follow a group of characters who, after seeing all of their friends posting on social media about this weird, like, ceramic ham that you could come and touch and ask to speak to you, they end up going to do this themselves. And when you do touch this hand and you say, "Talk to me," you end up seeing a spirit, and then you say, "Let me in," and it ends up consuming your body. And you only have 90 seconds while you're holding that hand to let go. If not, the spirit will stick around. That's the base premise here. And over the course of the film, we see tons of characters do this little thing over and over and over again to connect with the spirits, and they kind of get a bit of a high from it. They never really fully explain what it is that they feel when they're in that realm, but when they're in there, their eyes get completely blown out black, and they're essentially possessed for the time frame that they're holding this hand. And for a period of time, it seems like, just like a fun, crazy thing that the kids are doing. But of course, as time goes on, with that 90-second time limit, somebody does end up exceeding that, and that is our main character in the film, Mia, played by Sophie Wilde. And I'll start this off by saying that I thought she was a phenomenal actress, and I thought that majority of the cast here gives a really solid performance. There was nobody in this film that disappointed me on a performance level. I think for the most part, the cast is really strong. And the two directors of this film, Danny and Michael Philippou, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce their names. They actually started on YouTube, and this was their directorial debut of a feature-length film. They've done some TV miniseries, some stuff on YouTube, and some short films, but this was their first feature-length film, and I gotta just say, absolute kudos to them. I thought they did a fantastic job in this movie when it comes to a directorial standpoint and a writing standpoint. The film is very clever in a lot of ways, and for a debut of these two directors in the big way, I definitely see a big future for them in the future. They directed a very eerie and creepy film that isn't necessarily scary, but it's filled with tension and anxiety-ridden moments that really kept me completely engaged in the film from beginning to end. And I think that that's one of the main things I want to praise about this film is the engagement that it brought out of me. I never found myself bored. I found myself completely gripped from beginning to end to see where things would go, and I honestly consistently found myself entertained. Not once did I ever find myself out of the movie or the characters 100%. But what I will say with that said, though, is while I was wildly entertained by the film and really engrossed in everything that was happening, I found that the characters were really hard to get behind. There's only one character in this film, maybe, that I can say I can get behind, because they're the only one that's wary of what's going on the entire time, and the only one who doesn't necessarily want to partake in the insanity that's going on here. But when it comes to all the other characters, and most notably our lead character, Mia, played by Sophie Wilde, yeah, they're all horrible people. I found that they were just completely dumbass characters that were just consistently pushing the envelope, consistently pushing on more and more. And I think that that's where the film leans into its messaging about drug addiction specifically, but maybe just addiction in general, as our character Mia is somebody who's suffering from some trauma after her mother supposedly killed herself, and is now kind of struggling with her mother in general. And now that she's tapping into the spirit world, that's something that she kind of wants some answers about. And as we go further into the film, we realize that there's a bit of a generational addiction issue that has been passed on here, and the film definitely tackles how that can corrupt and ruin a household as time goes on. And I think for the most part, Sophie Wilde does a fantastic job here, really showcasing that drive and that consistent push to keep doing things that you're addicted to. And so because of that, her character, for me, was rather insufferable over the course of the film. While really well acted, over the course of the film, I was consistently frustrated with not only her character's choices, but everybody's choices in this film. And I think it really does highlight the idea of, like, you can have something terrible happen, you can have something that's borderline a really scary situation when it comes to something that people are addicted to. Oftentimes it does happen with things like drugs or alcoholism, where you have a really bad high or you pushed it a little too far, but then somebody else can push it a little too far and end up getting really hurt or really sick or end up dying. And so I think that this film does a good job of showcasing all of that when it comes to the idea of addiction. As for the horror element of it and just the overall movie, there were a lot of those horror cliches that you come to expect from this genre. There were definitely some, things that you just come to expect. It's not something that's necessarily completely reinventing the wheel, but I don't think it's trying to be. I think overall this is an incredibly well shot film that has a good eerie score to it, that's very well acted, and just has a solid message that does bring some very standard horror things into the mix. I will say the only thing that really holds this back from being a really strong film for me were the characters, but at the same time I was still really engrossed in the journey and the performances, and I think that they do kind of give a realistic depiction of peer pressure and how there are those who will push on and on and on. And while this movie does showcase some pretty dark stuff, I do truly believe that even if something like this was happening amidst some group of young teenagers, there would be a lot of people that would want to try it. There would be some people who want to push the envelope. And again, we see that with other things. It doesn't have to be an evil entity to show us that there are a lot of people in this world that will see something that's online, something that their friends are doing, be pressured to do it themselves, and a lot of times end up getting themselves into a world of hurt. But while this movie was really well made, I just wish I had connected to the characters a lot more. I really understood what they were going for with the characters, but they were insufferable to watch. I kept just throwing my hands up at the screen because because the characters were just making the worst choices ever. And so because of that, I feel like there's an element of this film that isn't going to be as rewatchable for me, but I can't deny that it was a very well-made film with very solid performances. And I really want to give some big praise to the cinematographer and composer of this film that I do think really gave a lot to this movie. The cinematographer was Aaron McLiskey, and I really enjoyed the way he shot a lot of these sequences. It has that great A24 indie style to it that I really enjoy, and it really added to a lot of the creep factor of the film. And then you have the composer Cornel Wilczek, which I found that a lot of the sequences in this film really worked because of his score that added a lot of tension to these moments. There were a lot of really great moments that the music itself was what was getting me kind of anxiety ridden as I was sitting there. So yeah, guys, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. There's definitely a lot more I could say about this movie, but I don't want to get into spoilers because I do recognize that a lot of you guys probably haven't seen the film yet. If you're a big fan of horror films, or you're just looking for something a little bit different in the horror genre right now, I definitely think this movie is worth checking out. I don't know that it's going to be a film that everybody's going to love. I think this is a film that may impress some on a big level, and some may not really enjoy this film at all. And I think that a big reason for that is whether or not you're going to be able to enjoy the characters and not enjoy the characters, or enjoy the characters enough or appreciate the approach with the characters enough while still enjoying the filmmaking. I think where you land on that kind of meter is going to really depend on your taste in films, but I do think that there's a lot to really praise about how this film was made, and it's undeniably very well acted, even if I didn't enjoy the characters and there's nobody I'm necessarily rooting for in this movie. So a big thanks to you guys for watching. Definitely hit that like button if you guys enjoyed the video. Comment a thought down below if you've seen the movie, have you not seen the movie, whatever the case may be. Let me know what you think about this movie down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.